Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube, you'll see a little link down below. You can click on it. If you then go to Zoom and see another little link, you can click on it, and there you will enter Mukana. And in Mukana, you become one of the producers. You're actually running the show. Your questions, your votes, your comments all become really the backbone of what we do here. So it's really important that you become involved. Now, if you want to become even more involved and actually join us on the panel, you just need to be here early. 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time is when you need to be here for mic checks to join this illustrious crew of over a half a millennia of experience. And we can, come be part of that panel. A lot of people get a little overwhelmed because the panel is pretty smart as a group. It's not any one of us. It's the fact that all of us have this little piece of knowledge and this little piece of knowledge and this little piece of knowledge. And as a group, we bring a lot of wisdom to bear. And so it's, if you think you have some little piece of knowledge that you can add to what we're doing, we'd love to have you. Now, if you're not sure, you can come at 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 6 a.m. At Pacific Standard Time. And there you can check your kit and make sure that everything's working. We're just talking about whatever we're talking about, and there's no promises there. But just interrupt us, test your system. We want to try to get everything as close as we can before we get to 6:40. Now, the first hour, of course, 7 to 8 is general discussion about media and virtual production. And so any questions you have in those areas, you're more than welcome to throw into Makana. Second hour is usually something that we're spending a lot more time thinking about. And so today we're really excited to have John Tatulis from Sound Devices, and he's going to join our discussion on the MixPre. A lot of us have MixPres. And so we're going to talk about how to get the most out of the hardware. Mickey is, I think, about half of this panel, maybe 2/3 of this panel have had a session with Mickey to make sure that their MixPre is working. So Mickey is there, and a lot of other folks here have been using it heavily. So we're going to mix and match that process there. Tomorrow we're going to look at everybody's system. So last week we had a ruthless review. We looked at the quality of everybody's cameras. Tomorrow we're going to, for those of you who are willing to show off, we're going to show what everybody's system actually looks like from behind the scenes. So I'm warning you, you might want to prep and clean up a little bit, make sure that you're ready for prime time. So hopefully you'll be ready to show that as the panel. Thursday, we're going to talk about social media. So how to fully take advantage of all the different platforms and figure out how to get the word out. Friday, we're going to talk about storage. What do we do? Where do we save it? How do we back it up? Where do we put it? So we're going to talk about that on Friday. And then Saturday, of course, is the long day. We'll have education for a couple hours. Then Nick Justin will be joining to talk to us about, or to talk with us and work with us on Unreal Engine. And then remember that we're cooking together at 5 o'clock. So for those of you who have been part of the cooking test, you're more than welcome to join us. We're experimenting with new ways of doing shows and how-to shows. And so we're going to be joining Mad in the Kitchen, Madeline Smithberg. And some of us will be in a group like this, and a handful of us will be actually in the show that goes out to YouTube, and then there's also going to be an opportunity to watch the production from behind the scenes. So there's going to be there's 3 different shows going on all at the same time. So if you're at all interested, I would carve out that time to be part of the show. All right, Bill, let's jump into the questions. And a reminder to our panelists, our producers have gotten exceptionally good at asking questions. We have to get exceptionally good at answering them. I'm not talking about, it's not a matter of answering them fast, but when we're answering, we really want to stay on target of just answering the question that's there and not wandering too far off into the weeds, because we have 21 questions to start with. All right, go ahead, Bill. 24.
Guy Cochran from Seattle is first up this morning. With things are changing so fast, in addition to the media badge trick for saving luggage fees, what's another closely held production tip that attendees, our fellow producers, should now know?
Secret event tips or secret media tips. I think one of them is probably, while everyone else thinks about this, I think one of them is attitude goes a long way to what you can get into and what you can't get into. Just remember that there's wristbands and there's all this other stuff, but you appearing that you know where you're going goes a long way in being able to get to where you need to go, and sometimes where you shouldn't go. Go ahead, Rupert.
So a professional looking radio on your belt with a coiled mic at the top here can get you around some corners, a high-vis vest maybe, or just continually wearing an IFB and a lapel mic.
Yeah. So all of those things are ways that you can kind of slide through. But attitude by itself can go a long way. Go ahead, Roscoe.
A suit and a tie does the same thing. Sometimes it gets you in those higher offices that you wouldn't otherwise wander into. Yeah,
go ahead, Jason, Jan, and then Paul.
Be sure you have really good-looking equipment, good-looking matching gear. I think Alex's example was don't use milk crates to bring your stuff in. Don't use milk crates, and be nice. Recognize that people are people, and you'd be amazed at what you can get if you just ask for it.
I think that is probably the best kept secret, is that almost everything that you do when you travel, when you go to a restaurant, when you do production, is all about how you relate to other people. And most people think it's transactional. It's not. Everybody can make exceptions. Everyone can do something a little extra. And when you don't take that into account when interacting with people around you, you're giving up. It's not that you're undermining anything, but you're giving up a lot of what's available, especially when you get into a bind. Go ahead, Jan, and then Paul.
Always have a clipboard with you.
Go ahead, Paul.
If you really want to impress people, like you were saying, get one of these.
There you go.
This.
There it is.
Wait, there's one that's better. You can get this one, and that's even more impressive.
There you go. All right, Ken.
Just to say that all these secrets that we're sharing, they're not really secrets. So just ignore everything you've just heard.
Go ahead, JJ.
Make friends in low places. Know who the cleanup crew is, and have an extra 20 available.
I think I've talked about this before. I have an EIC and that always has Cuban cigars, and he just hands them out to all kinds of folks that are not normally used to getting Cuban cigars. And anytime he's kind of doing this thing, you don't really know what he does. Like, he just wanders around and solves things. But anytime something needs to get done, things get done. And he's connected to everyone. Go ahead, Chris, real quick.
As an editor, a lot of times I'm left out of memos going to the rest of the crew, and I showed up an hour late for breakfast last time I was in DC at the convention center, and I had been very friendly with the wait staff, and he was packing up the food. He's like, "Oh, dude, I got you." Boom. I had my own private breakfast. It was great.
Yeah. Next question.
Vincent Chan in Singapore this morning says, with broadcast, we set to -24 LUFS, loudest units full scale. With YouTube, they recommend -14 LUFS. Why did you choose 24 for Zoom, Alex?
Mickey. I chose, by the way, I just want to say I had a very technical reason for going to -24. It's because Mickey suggested it. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah. A bunch of reasons, but the main reason that I suggested that we shift to -24 is that not many people are capable of cleanly getting to -20 or -14 LUFS. And is louder actually better?
Right. Absolutely. Roscoe?
Yeah, the Pulse and TechRise cannot get past 24 very easily without audio hijack and other assistance. So that's really, thank you, Mickey.
Next question.
Brian Carpenter in Cleveland, Ohio says, I've enjoyed office hours cooking and pie shows, Raspberry Pi shows, especially as Zoom enables me to full screen any camera throughout the show. But I'm worried about mistakenly selecting request control and interrupting the talent again. Is there a view-only role that still allows pinning but prevents interference?
Yeah, go ahead, Jan.
I want to say that's an excellent question, because I was watching the Raspberry Pi and I was pinning individual people the way I wanted to see it. But then somebody said, "Oh, you're not participating." And they put me back as an attendee. And then I could only see what you guys wanted me to see. And so I think it's a great question.
It's a really interesting opportunity there. I have to think about that. Meetings might make more sense. So I don't do meetings very often because I feel like it pressures everybody to be on air. But I can see how, to your point, being able to multi-pin 5 or 6 different people cooking could be a really interesting experience for people who are just watching. Something to think about. Go ahead, Jason.
I've got a really silly and obvious answer. I believe you can disable request control in the meeting controls.
We won't do that because we actually want to be able to control it, especially for some of the cooks that are coming up. We'll want to be able to do that. So when we have to do it all system wide, we can't. I don't think we can just set it to like co-hosts or other things like that. It's like it's kind of an all or nothing problem right now, which again calls to Zoom to be more give us more control. Although one possibility might be something with Zoom OSC. So we can take a look at that as well. Next question.
Comes from Greg Gibson, and Greg in Washington, D.C. says, with all the time spent in headphones these days, I have developed a pretty good case of tinnitus or tinnitus. I'm curious of others who are experiencing similar issues and how you protect your ears.
Go ahead, Stuart, and then Mickey.
First up, the headphones aren't the cause of the tinnitus. Loud noises are. It doesn't matter if they're from a headphone or from a speaker, or in my case, an RX-7 on a two-step belching flames out of the exhaust. If you get damage to your ears, it will cause tinnitus, and it never goes away. There are ways to just even try massaging the back of your ears or cleaning out the ear canals and the connection between your nasal passages and your ears, which, as you can tell today, mine are blocked. Those are sorts of things that will reduce the pressure and reduce the incidence of tinnitus, but it never goes away. You have to learn to manage it.
You get used to it. I've had it for a solid 30 years. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Jeffrey. It's never silent. It's never like totally silent. It's just like this. It just goes down to a nice little hum. You always feel like you've got something there. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Jeffrey.
Yeah. We call this train your ears to monitor at a lower level. It's going to take a couple of days, but for your ears to open up and get used to monitoring at a lower level. But it'll, as Stuart said, it's something that doesn't always return back to normal. If you're in a loud, high noise environment, which I don't think you are, Greg, but if in case you are, switch to an ear monitor so that you have a proper seal there and you don't have to monitor too loud. And yeah, I think that's it.
I mean, back to Stuart's point is that you don't, like, having in-ear actually makes it better because you theoretically you're blocking everything else out, and you can turn it to a much lower level without having to overdrive over top of everything else. Jeffrey and then John.
One trick that some drummers use is actually put in little nubs into the ears, and then they put the cups on. And the other thing is, don't clean out your ears. Let the wax do its job. A lot of people think that earwax is a bad thing. It is actually a good thing to have in your ears. Do not use Q-tips to clean it out. If you decide you want to clean out your ear, use a little bit of saline solution. Let it sit there for a minute, and then dump it out from there.
Good, John.
Let your ears rest. Also, you need to take breaks. You need to step away, take the cans off, give yourself some quiet time. Just like, you're sitting all day, stand, just like in your ears, you've got to take those cans off and let your ears rest.
That's a great point. Courtney and then Stuart real quick.
Yeah, the best way to avoid tinnitus is to don't talk about tinnitus, because the neurological link brings it to foreground. And once you start thinking about it, you start hearing it more.
Go ahead, Stuart, real quick.
One thing with using in-ear monitors, don't be afraid to use a second pair over the top to reduce the background noises even further, so you're only hearing, and then you can bring the level down on your in-ear monitors.
When I do stuff, when I'm working on a concert in the same area of the concert, a lot of times I'll use the big aircraft ones, and I'll put my in-ears in, and then I put the aircraft cups over top to knock it all down. Next question.
Jonas Dotel of Reutling in Germany comes back with, when you hire people for your shows, what do you look for? What should somebody bring with him or her?
When we think about what to bring with him or her, I would say being on time is a good place to start. That's a good, and being dressed and ready, that is client facing, helps a lot. Knowing what you're actually doing is good. Not asking the questions that you have to, but not constantly, and definitely not talking too much, especially about things that are not the project. And finally, not being distracted by your phone. So those are the things that I would bring. Those would be the first things that I would bring to a show. Go Jason and then Rupert.
Again, obvious things: be well rested, be well fed, and be 15 minutes early. And ask the silly questions like, who should I go for what and when, and that kind of logistic stuff, if possible, beforehand.
And I would recommend being sometimes very early, but don't let the producer know that you're early, or don't put yourself in their space. More than 5 minutes late, you're late. More than 5 minutes early, they have to manage you. So, you just want to be there right when you said you were going to be there. You want to be able to, tell them, maybe even ping somebody on site to let them know, but don't get into their space because they're not ready for you a lot of times. Go ahead, Rupert.
Yeah, in terms of getting there early, I would say get nearby early, stand by locally somewhere, and then at the last minute you can get on site, real close on time. In terms of other things to bring with you, personal items. If you wear contacts, glasses, have allergies, bring all your paraphernalia that you need to maintain yourself as a person, because I don't want you running down to CVS in the middle of a deal to get something you should have had. Everyday carry items like a multi-tool can get you, it can help you in all kinds of ways, and cash. Just have some cash on you for getting lunch or paying for parking or something, because you don't want to run to an ATM or have to borrow money at the last minute.
It's every producer's responsibility to make sure that everyone's fed at a regular basis and make sure that things are available. But I always show up with enough to eat the whole day, like just power bars and other things like that. The people who say, "Oh my gosh, I have to eat because I have sugar, I have this sugar thing, or I have that sugar thing," or if they have some special, like, I can just tell you that producers won't call you back unless you're really, really good. Like, so anything special, anything that creates a bump in what you're asking them to do, you have to be exceptionally good. But if you're coming in as a PA and you're like that at the beginning, you won't get called back. Jeffrey and then JJ, real quick. We're gonna move through it quick.
Curious, I've never heard about the pre not showing up too early. So would a texting system work for something like that? Or
sometimes texting to say I'm in the vicinity, but usually I won't even let people know. I usually find a coffee shop, restaurant, diner, somewhere that I can just open up my laptop. I get there. I'm there. I typically aim to be there 1.5 times longer than it took me to get there. So if I'm an hour away, then I'll be an hour and a half early. Like that's kind of, and it gives me tons of room. And I have other things to do. I have plenty, we have computers now. We can do lots of things, and I'll be there early so that if I have traffic jams, if I have a whole bunch of unexpected things, my job is to be there on time. My job is not to come. Being late with an excuse does not equal being on time. JJ and then Stuart.
I've always tried to make sure I have a full toolbox of everything that I might need. And then with respect to food, I try to always bring food for everyone. But last time it worked out weird.
Yeah. We're going to move on because we're going to next question.
Keenan Campbell of Princeton, Illinois is up next with what is Ken Jordan's telestrator setup with colors?
How is he getting the colors?
I had a better demo before, but it didn't really work.
Okay.
Whoa, that's Inception, grid Inception.
I use there's two applications, three applications actually. There's one called Whiteboard. The two actually, they're both actually called Whiteboard. They're slightly different apps. This one I like is because it has it's a simpler interface, and you're choosing the colors and stuff on the pen or the eraser.
How do you key that over?
Here. Good question, because they're
we're just seeing black now.
I need to I'll show the I've been playing around with the different keying. Maybe if I share my
can you show it in action?
Yeah. Let's do that.
Caught Ken off guard.
Yeah, you have. Well, I had it all set up on my and then one of my Macs anyway.
Okay.
But,
we'll ask that. We'll come back. We'll come back. Ken, let us know later if you've got it all set up. Okay. Next question.
Moving on to Vincent Chen in Singapore. Vincent says, you guys mentioned about using Facebook Portal to force Zoom into 720p. How do you do that?
Go ahead, Mickey. Mickey and then Guy.
I think Guy might be able to show it better.
Go ahead, Guy.
Maybe I might be able to show it better. Here's the portal. It's pretty easy. There's an app on it. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. That looks like that. Zoom. Click on it. There's Zoom. You say join. You type in the meeting ID, like this one's office hours. It pops in, and that's it. 720p.
Nice.
That's simple.
So, key right now if you don't have 720p. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, and you can use the most inexpensive portal, which is the 8-inch. It'll do the same.
And that will also bump up the quality of your stream to your stream out as well, which we've done. I've had our rooms jump into other clients' setups because they were getting 360. Next question.
Keenan Campbell of Princeton, Illinois says, let's talk about shoes or boots. Long days running around, what does the panel wear? I'm a fan of Salomon, but they don't seem to last as long as I would hope.
Go ahead, Stuart, and then Jason.
I'm going to give a shout out to an Aussie brand, and I'm going to put the link in Mukana ready for us. This is a brand called Redback, which are made in Sydney. They look like dress shoes if you polish them up. They've also got a steel cap version, but they're actually hiking boots. Now, if you're a security guard in Australia like I used to be, you're not allowed to wear steel caps because they're classed as a weapon. These look like professional boots, and they are crazy comfortable. You can spend 8 hours on your feet and not have sore feet, ankles, or knees with these.
Go ahead, Jason.
I absolutely swear by, especially when I'm doing, trade shows, but basically any event where I'm going to be on my feet. The UK version of Doc Martens are completely different than the ones that are made in China. And I use a custom orthotic in there, and the kicker is elastic shoelaces with a drawstring that pulls it really tight and supports your ankle beautifully. I'll put some links in Mukana.
Go ahead, Ant. I can't hear you, Ant. Go ahead. You're quiet. Ant, can't hear you. Double mic.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I highly suggest a running shoe. I particularly use Nike running shoes, but my trick is to get them like half a size larger, because if you're running around CES all day long, that's a lot of pressure on your feet, and you don't want your shoes to start to feel tighter.
Go ahead, Bill, and then Rupert.
For all last 10 years, I've used running shoes of some sort, but if I have to dress up, there is a company called Mephisto that has stores all around the country. Their shoes are extraordinary, and they look like dress shoes. So they are the most comfortable padded shoes. They're expensive, but I have 2 pairs of Mephistos, and if I have to go into an executive circumstance where I'm standing next to a lot of people who are dressed up, I use those.
Go ahead, Rupert.
Just don't forget options. If I'm driving to a different state and then doing a job on site and then getting on a flight, I might need 3 different pairs throughout a different time.
Yeah, go ahead, Jan, and then Mickey.
Always wear comfortable socks as well, and bring a couple of extra pair of socks.
Mm-hmm. And go ahead, Mickey.
I used to, if I'm just in the city, Adidas running shoes, or just a pair of slip-on Vans, if it's not a formal thing. But if we are shooting on location, usually a pair of waterproof Columbia or North Face shoes. It rains a lot here.
I pretty much worn Doc Martens for 30 years, and they've just gone from being boots that went with my leather jacket to nice looking shoes. So as I get older, the height of the Doc Marten went down, and the depth of the heel went down. But otherwise, it's all been pretty much the same. And then smart wool socks are the key to the operation. All right, next question.
Brian Anderson, Silver Spring, Maryland, says, I have a teleprompter I'm considering modifying to give it a larger beam splitter. What are the advantages or disadvantages of rectangular versus trapezoidal glass and 70-30 versus 60-40 glass? Courtney?
Well, trapezoidal lets you get a wider angle lens, a wider angle view. Otherwise, it will start to impinge at the top of your screen, because remember, that glass is sitting at a 45-degree angle to your lens, and so the top is going to be further away from the lens than the bottom. The bottom will be behind the lens, front surface of the lens. So the trapezoid lets you use wider angle lenses with, on your camera. 70-30 versus 60-40. We use 60-40 for outdoor because it's more reflective and less transmissive, and a lot of times people will be putting ND filters on cameras outdoors, and this avoids them from having to do that pretty much. And it gives you a brighter image because it's reflecting more of the monitor toward the talent. 70-30 is standard for indoors, so it doesn't knock out, it's a third of a stop, so it doesn't knock out too much of your light to your camera.
That's great. There's your question. There's your answer. All right, next question.
Eric Eckert of Bad Herrenheim, Germany, says, I got a request from a theater to to live stream an auction of costumes, what tools or platform would you use for the bidding specifically?
There are, yeah. It depends on, I'm assuming that you're trying to do it as a big auction, so it's, and that is a thing. Like, it's not something you just kind of throw up on a web page. Go ahead, Leland.
I knew you were going to hit me fast. There are a couple out there that I've used in the past that are adding sales within live video streaming on the network. BeLive.tv, or otherwise known as B.live, is one of them. The other is Stage10.tv, has an app available called Rozy.tv, ROZY.tv. One to take a look at and see if that's more of a mobile version, but it allows you to show your products that you're trying to sell, put prices on the screen, and people can literally buy through PayPal or Stripe right through your broadcast.
But they're not able to do the traditional auction setup because that mechanism is complicated. Like, it's,
yeah,
and I find it to be, I don't like auctions because there's this whole thing of everything's $5 until 10 seconds before the end, and then suddenly it's, because what you do is you kind of set your max, and then everything just scrolls up, and you don't get to see at all what's going on. So it's
there are apps out there that have kind of been incorporated into live streaming that allow you to show things on the screen. I'd look into some of the Twitch plugins, honestly, that would be your best approach to find something like that.
Next question.
Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas, and he says, "What does Ken Jordan use for the telestrator?" Oh, wait a second, we've done that already.
We did that, but it might be an opportunity. Ken, are you ready to come back and show us what you have there? Nope. It might be another day. Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. Next question.
Moving on. Rupert McCrae of Dallas, Texas. Does anyone have a useful purpose for a Microsoft Surface Pro in production over and above an iPad, for example?
Go ahead, Jason.
There's exactly one that I am aware of, and it is updating the firmware on all sorts of Blackmagic things. You can run it around and run your updates.
I have. We've used it a lot for as a controller for different things that just require PCs. I mean, that is when I have a PC on site that I have, it's usually a Surface, so that, and it's usually just there'll be specific apps that I need for whatever reason. And also I use it to view my show on Windows, just to make sure that it's just a nice thing that I can set up and just pop in and watch a show and have it and make sure that it's showing up on Windows, because otherwise I'm kind of all Mac. Go ahead, Sky.
And the unique thing about the Surface is that it doesn't change its operating system from the laptop. It's the same operating system.
Mm-hmm.
And it also, the touchscreen, there's a lot more touchscreen laptops on the in the Windows environment,
mm-hmm.
which is kind of a unique experience as well with big keyboards.
Next question.
And Pruitt of San Francisco says, handheld camera rigs get heavy after a while. Does the panel have a fitness or wellness routine to combat forearm and shoulder pain?
Bill and then Stuart.
When I was doing a lot of handheld camera work, I started out working with 5-pound dumbbells and just doing a whole series of exercises to get the shoulder and other muscles in that, particularly your chest, your pecs, and things like that, as strong as can be. Went from 5-pound to 10-pound, about 15 pounds. I stopped doing those reps, but that's been hugely helpful in being able to steady. And also, you just learn to keep your arms in and move with your body rather than your arms as much as possible.
Stuart?
Okay, there's a couple of things. Firstly, having a camera assistant who can take the thing off of you when you need a break, or could step in to be the camera operator when you need a break. Secondly, a tripod to put the thing on rather than you carrying it. And every time a director says cut, put the damn thing down. Like, make sure you're taking the weight off of your system, right? And that will give you a break straight away.
Go ahead, Chris.
I have sort of what Stuart was just talking about. I have my C stand with a double super clamp here, but I also have a handle that I bought for the kind of underslung position, and it came with a strap, and that slings around kind of the shoulder and kind of back. And instead of pulling and holding up all the time, you push against the strap, and it gives the opposite activation for a little while, and still steadies it because you kind of have that 3 points of stabilization against the body, and you're using the opposite musculature. So you're pushing instead of pulling and lifting. So
good, Jason and Courtney and Jeffrey, real quick.
My suggestion is as much a stretch as it is a strength building thing. As a drummer, I learned basically to take a drumstick and take a small weight and just roll with my forearms, roll up and then roll down very slowly. And that will build, that and lat pulls can pretty much fix anything. And just be sure you stretch. Doesn't matter how old you are, stretch.
Courtney and then Jeffrey real quick.
Yeah, Guy Cochran posted in Makana there the Easy Rig, which takes the weight of the camera and puts it around your waist by hanging a little bungee cord from a rod over your head. And if you ever look at Steadicam operators, you'll notice they have huge calves from walking in the Groucho walk to avoid a vertical movement. And so work on your calves.
Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Mickey real quick.
And remember your joints. Have a brace or two handy to cover your elbows or things like that. Compression sleeves work, and then sports tape. That sports tape that they put around the muscle to help alleviate any type of irregular stretching.
Go ahead, Mickey.
For handheld, for shoulder rigs, make sure your camera is well balanced. You want the weight to be on the shoulder, and you want your forward arm to not have to carry any weight. It's just for stabilization.
My brother's a Steadicam operator. He does yoga. Now that the part of it is that his wife is Jill White Lindsay. Shameless plug. It's my sister-in-law, and she's a therapeutic yoga teacher, and so she actually uses yoga to treat issues as opposed to just raw yoga. And so because that's his wife, he's pretty good at it. But I think he does it every day to stay in shape. And he's using a full-sized Steadicam rig with a Trinity head on it. So it's a lot of weight. Next question.
Eddie Scott of Mission Viejo, California says, is it still planned to open the comms channel on the cooking show? If so, how would that work?
We're going to feed the comms into there'll be a second Zoom. So there's 3 shows going on at one time. This is a crazy experiment. One show is the main show, and I'll be cutting that show this week. We'll see if I keep on doing it. Then and that's going to have 2 or 3 people from the cooking group in it that are interacting with Madeline and the cook. And then there'll be another group that's much like what we did last Saturday that'll all be cooking together, watching the show, talking about it amongst themselves. And Madeline will check in with them during the show and after the show, as well as the chef, and really have more of a conversation. Then there's a third show, which is you will see the multi-views that are that you'll see my multi-views, what I'm looking at while I'm cutting, and you'll hear the comms, all the comms of whatever we're talking about, and you guys can talk amongst yourselves. And then after the show, I'll stop and talk to you guys about what worked and didn't work and what you thought and everything else. And while Madeline's talking to the other group. So that's kind of how that's all going to go. So you won't have to do anything to get the comms. You'll just watch the Zoom and we'll feed them in. Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Pre-prod meeting. Thank you.
Yeah. Next question.
Tobias Moss in Minneapolis says, when does it matter to full screen and which windows during a Zoom session? Does OBS need to be full screen? Does live streaming, host, or local cloud records need Zoom to be full screened? And do share screen windows need to be full screened?
I rarely full screen almost anything. The only reason that is nice is because it will constrain your aspect ratio. So when you're sharing a screen, if it's full screen and it's set at 1920 by 1080, it'll make sure that it stays at the correct aspect ratio for a record. If you do a screen share with a square record, it will screw up everything. so that's the main reason to go full screen. But outside of that, I don't use it that often. Go ahead, Leland.
One of the reasons we had to go full screen in a production that we did was because we built templates that were going to go over windows within Zoom for a 2-up, 3-up, 4-up, 5-up, 7-up. And in doing so, we had to know exactly where the Zoom windows were going to land. So by going full screen, we always knew where that was at on the grid. So we could just cut those out and leave an alpha channel behind on a graphic that we could throw any graphic we wanted onto those boxes and know they were going to land in the right place. And we could also bring them in just enough so that the little yellow box you see that pops up every time someone speaks would not be visible on the broadcast.
Yeah, and we use scalers to basically move those around, cut things out, as well as do any proc amps that we need to change the color. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
As for OBS, depending on how you're using it, you shouldn't have to full screen that. It controls its own canvas size within.
Next question.
Chan Landy of Las Vegas, and here in the panel, says there are many members of the regular panel of office hours that have shared part of their work history during the show. And it's amazing the brain trust that office hours has attracted. I know it would be very interesting to hear these stories. When could this happen?
pre-show, pre-show. We talk about it a lot. we tell war stories and go through it. We eventually may go back to doing a meet the panel, but it's I'm not sure. It's just a matter of whether you have to think about the entire viewing audience. so we may go back to that, but I think that the pre-show and the pre-show are good examples of that. Go ahead, Jan, real quick.
I believe I said in the after-hour show, the post-show is when all of this information has come up.
Yeah,
and so that's when I'm saying, everybody here is so fascinating in what their history is. I don't want to know what they're doing right now. I want to know how they got to where they are right now.
And those are great. That's what the after show, the pre-show are all great for. Is for people to talk a little bit more about what they've done. Next question.
Ruben Marchena, Grand Rapids, Michigan's back. I'm looking for good, better, or best wire microphones for speaking and singing for a church. So looking for suggestions.
Yeah, Mickey. It depends. What do you think, Mickey? What would you?
I mean, an easy answer to give would be SM58, but it really depends on what there's so many choices. Like, look at the SM58. There's a 421 is also good. I don't know. But give me a budget then.
I mean, yeah, you start to go into also like things like Sanken and DPA have a lot of great solutions for those kinds of things where you can drop them in and use them as area mics. And so I think that those are the ones that we've used for some of those solutions. Go ahead, Bill.
Just really quickly, dynamic mics, if they have a long handle version, that usually means they were made for some sort of interview situation. They're good for voice. And so if you're just speaking, those have been my go-to.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jason.
Another really great one that is not extremely expensive. Of course, you could use a lav, and I've actually seen people use a Sennheiser lav and put them in a handheld microphone just as a prop. But a really good one is the Rode Reporter. I
think those are hard for. I mean, as far as like people actually in front of people speaking, I think a lot of these we want to look at things that are kind of low profile. One for people who are moving around a lot. I guess Garth Brooks swears by the crown. That's what I hear from some people here on the panel. Go ahead, Rupert.
I use these Behringer ones at my wedding. Work great.
There you go. Next question.
Paul Wallace says, what is macro I/O?
I don't know. Go ahead, Jan.
Macro I/O is a Zoom type software as OSC. And what I think the feature is that each person gets in their own bubble, and the more they talk, the bigger their bubble gets, and you see a percentage of how much someone's talking. So where it would be used, if you're holding a show or a meeting, you get to see who's talking the most so that you could focus in on people who aren't participating.
Next question.
Vincent Alvarez, Bellingham, Washington, says he's transferred old 8mm films. Now he needs to have a watch party with family in California, and he wonders if he should do it over Zoom and a screen share or have them cue start independently over YouTube. And he's worried about frame rate versus resolution. The films themselves are 720 by 480.
Go ahead, Jason.
I think that's going to depend very technically on, or very much on the technical expertise of your audience, of your family. If they're comfortable with something like a replay, if they're not going to talk over, if they know how to mute themselves, then I think Zoom would work just fine, especially at that resolution.
Yeah, the resolution's low enough that if you had a Zoom room, for instance, jump in, you're going to get all the resolution you need. So you're at 720p, you're going to have all the resolution you need. Then I would then pipe it in rather than do a screen share. Find a way to push it in there, and then you should get a high frame rate and full resolution rendition of the videos. Go ahead, Mickey.
For a little simpler setup, compress it to H.264 and share it as a video on Zoom, which plays it out as a video clip and at the native frame rate and resolution, and you have control over the transport controls.
Next question.
Aaron Giancarlo of Flagstaff, Arizona says, I'm looking for recommendations for anti-collision lights for a DJI Mavic. What does the panel suggest?
Go ahead, Stuart.
I would double check whether you're allowed to fly it at night if you need those lights on it. Because a lot of jurisdictions do not allow drone operation at night.
Go ahead, Jason.
Well, and what's more, the Mavic has lighting on it that is a very specific color and brightness and strobes in a very specific way. I would be very inclined to not mess with that, or get a more current Mavic that has more lighting and more lighting options. You can control the color on the newer ones, for example.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Lytra and LumeCube, they both have lights that do that type of anti-flicker. They might be a little bit too heavy for the Mavic, though. I'm not exactly sure.
Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, you can upset the dynamics of the flight controls and everything by attaching anything to your drone unless it's made to carry stuff. I've had experience with that.
I would say even something as small as a Ricoh Theta extended out a little bit below the Mavic or a Phantom in my case is enough to create a pendulum effect that causes it to not survive.
You would never put, like, a Ricoh Theta would destroy a Mavic.
I can tell you, I wish I had a video of it, but you're absolutely right. It will destroy it. All right, go ahead, Ant. Oh, you're double muted again, Ant.
If you go with the LumeCube, make sure you go with the proper one because they have a couple different models out there, and one model has a magnet in it that will destroy the drone.
There you go. That's a good one. Next question.
David Brady in New York, and thanks for the pronunciation. Fear of missing out question. When the Discord link is published each day, is it necessary to follow it if you're already on Discord? He's still trying to get up to speed on Discord.
Link is published every day.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, absolutely no.
One time.
No, that's just for. So we publish the Discord link every morning at 6:40 a.m. so that people who want to join and become part of it that's their time that they can come and join our Discord community, which I think we're approaching 1,100 people in it, and you don't, once you do it once, unless you get kicked out. The only reason that you get kicked out is if you don't put first name space last name. Chad and I kind of wander through, and if we see stuff in the back end that don't have first name space last name, we'll kick you out, and you'll get a little message that says non-standard naming. The other place that we might kick you out is if we see duplicates. So we might kick the wrong one out, but we'll usually keep it clean as we can. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, he's already on Discord. I assume in another area, he does need our link to get into our Discord.
Yeah, if you haven't used the link to get into Discord, to our Discord server, then you definitely need that link. And we distribute it every morning at 6:40 a.m. To make that available. All right, next question.
Scott in Bexley, Ohio says, thinking clarification, adding an Echo Show will upgrade a Zoom call to 720p, and so then you can share graphics via camera input and they don't look horrible. His understanding, it's not the 1080p of a Zoom room.
Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, so for clarification, the Zoom room does not do 1080p. It still does the same 720p, so the underlying architecture behind the Echo Show, and make sure it's an Echo Show 8 or 10. The original Echo Show doesn't work, so it's only the newer ones, the 8 and the 10, and those will bring it up to 720p. So if you have a standard account with 360p, those graphics are going to look ratty. This brings it up to 720p.
By the way, one thing that Bill had noticed on the last one that David Brady did is you can now go in. We talked about this last night. You can now actually go into your profile of your in Mukana. So if you go into Mukana and you go and you click on the little hamburger and your options, and you go down and you'll see in the profile, you'll see pronunciation. So you can actually put your name and location pronunciation into that area. If you do that, it won't show up on the front end. You won't see any change on your end, but it changes on our end. So on our side, we get to see pronunciation so that when Bill's reading it, he has something to read. And there are pronunciation generators that are available on the web. You can just put your name in or put the location in and it'll pull it back. Just cut and paste that in. Rupert?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the context of that question, but whether you're using a Zoom room or an Echo to get the bump in resolution, you don't have to then input the video in through that device. That just upgrades the whole meeting.
All it has to do is touch it for 30 seconds, right? Right, Guy?
Yeah, if it just even comes into the waiting room, you don't even have to have it come into the meeting. It will do the bump. So you could bump up other people's meetings, and we do it all the time for churches. If Tony was here, we'd help him out all the time, and his congregation loves it.
Next question.
Talak Lopez Waterman of New York says, what's your favorite live keying software?
My favorite is Conduit, but it doesn't run on everything anymore, but it's still the best one. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, Conduit was absolutely amazing, and I don't think it runs on anything anymore since what, Catalina, I think.
Yeah, Catalina, yeah. It was 32-bit. Yeah, but it's, I don't know what, we're talking about software, so go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, it's the ATEM software control that controls the hardware for $299. You get an awesome hardware. I mean, there's nothing software on the market that is going to touch the ATEM for $299. The advanced gear in that is amazing. So I would not mess around. I would just go ahead and get
the irony is that the math is so simple to produce that key, and that nobody is producing that plugin or that live keyer. I mean, Conduit, what we had in Conduit was not. It was this Swiss Army knife, but it wasn't there was no special sauce. It was super basic math. And I mean math like what we learned when we were 6 kind of math. I mean, add, subtract, that's it. So anyway, it's an amazing thing that everyone does it so badly, because chroma key was computationally easy long ago, and people who write this software don't understand what it is, what keying is. They search chroma key, they copy and paste the code, and they put it in. They go, okay, we have a chroma keyer, and it's just really not that complicated. It's not hard at all to make a good keyer. Anyway, but maybe someday. Next question.
Rupert McCrae of Dallas, Texas, says, with AV production and things like SMPTE 2110 demanding more and more on IP, Internet protocols, is the adoption of IPv6 likely to accelerate?
Go ahead, Jason.
In the long run, yes. In the short run, absolutely not. It's just it's one of these things that like a lot of techs don't fully understand and don't trust, and it tends to break a lot of hardware-based firewalls. So, in the short run, pretty much not.
It's going to be the future. I mean, we all know that. The bottom line is you can't read it. Like when you look at a V4. You go, oh, I can type it in. You can't type a V6 in. And I guarantee, like, the reason that I resist V6 when I see it is because I can't type it in. Like, I don't know what I'm,
it's not for humans.
It's, and so it's it literally goes, oh, I don't want to, I just go, I'm going to go back to V4 until I'm forced into V6 because I can't read it and I can't type it in. Go ahead, JJ.
It's just hex.
I know,
it's really
but
simple.
It's
but that's it.
They would have done better by just adding
question.
two more fields. So anyway,
but anyway,
if they wanted adoption.
So different base numbering system, many more. But that said, yes, it'll be very slow because even the router and firewall manufacturers, even they don't always put in that, like Big Leaf. It's one of the big. I mentioned a couple times for load balancing, they don't support V6 on the edge by default, which is just madness.
Right. Well, but
that said, as more and more folks are figuring out how to use classless routing, and they do natting and they do double natting and build large networks within their edge, then the requirement and the need for it is disappearing. That and dynamic DNS, for folks who you don't have to have a static IP. So as carriers are getting closer to super natting a bunch of stuff, they're working around the need for V6, but V6 is absolutely necessary for a lot of the protocols.
I'm not disagreeing with it. It's coming. Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Oh my gosh. Paul is in, and I've been pronouncing it Paul Wallace for hundreds of shows, and it turns out that he's put in the pronunciation guide, and it's Valhus. And I'm just sorry, Paul, that I mispronounce your name all this time. This is a great system. Thank you, Alex, for getting this put in.
Go ahead, Paul. I think Paul might be having fun with us.
Well,
is it really
I talked to a person from Norway the other day, and I said,
so it's not how normal people normally do it.
Name? And they taught me for the first time after 76 years how to pronounce my name. So I finally took 76 years to figure that out.
So but from now on, it's Paul Valhoos. Here at least. This will be the one place. Everyone else in your life will call you Wallace, but we will have Valhoos. All right, go ahead. What's the question?
So that's the power of the pronunciation thing. We'll pronounce it how you tell us to from now on. Yep. That's great. So anyway, Paul's question is from Austin. How do you push the audio of a Zoom session to Clubhouse, Twitter Spaces, Discord, and any of the other rapidly proliferating social audio apps?
The main thing with most of the apps, go ahead, Jason.
Alex's way is actually the best. Dante is fantastic. I've used Adapter 3 from, JK Audio. But other than that, can't really beat anything else.
Yeah, what I'm using is I have the Audinate Bluetooth to Dante. So my audio goes into the Sound Devices Scorpio, and from there it's delivered via Dante to the Audinate, and then that shows up as a headset connection to the phone. And that bypasses anything that might be ignoring audio inputs. It has to look, for many of these apps, it has to look like it's a headset. And so you can go through the analog hole where you have the lightning to 1/8 inch TRRS, or you can do that. Go ahead. And there's other things like iRig and everything else that works, but these are the one that's the most stable. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, specifically for Clubhouse, it is looking for a standard like headset connection because it doesn't want people to feed, higher end interfaces, I guess, for some reason. I'm not sure why. But for other apps that can take standard interfaces on specifically for mobile apps, you can use a little lightning for Apple devices, a little lightning to USB-A adapter, and use a Sound Devices MixPre.
And I've had trouble seeing the MixPre in Clubhouse once you hit mic. So the MixPre going straight through it. Now I use the MixPre to do a roundabout way of doing it, using it as the analog in and out. But I found that when I had the MixPre, have you done it with Clubhouse, Mickey? That it works with a lot of audio interfaces.
A MixPre won't work with a Clubhouse because it wants that protocol that appears as a headset.
Yep. Next question.
David Brady of New York is back with recently acquired a Shure X2U, and I'm happy with the results. If any auto processing is ever needed, what are my options on Windows and or Mac?
Audio hijack. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm not sure if David is asking about for a live use case as opposed to a pre-recorded use case, but for live, yeah, as Alex mentioned on Mac, Audio Hijack, which is running here, and on Windows, Voice Meter, Banana, Potato, Vegetable, Fruit.
It's a horrible name. I can't help but say that's a horrible name. Every time I hear it, I'm just like, who thought of that? Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, Voice Meter, but we'll have to sideload a backup, a third-party program such as Cantabile or something like that to do any type of extra EQing or bringing in WLM meters. Other than that, there's a lot of Windows PCs are now coming with the functionality inside an extra app that you just basically load that will do some post-processing beyond what Windows does.
Next question.
Roman Kuryuk of Kyiv, Ukraine says, what is your favorite audio mixer with matrix switching for the purpose of preparing and sending up to 5 audio programs?
My current favorite, I think, I haven't tried to do this with 5 programs, but what we're using internally is the BSS 806 is a pretty awesome solution for building a whole bunch of different pipelines in and out. We're using it for our comms, for Unity comms. And so that's it's heavy handed. Retail is way too expensive, but it's less if you buy it on eBay. But you could do this with something like an X32, right, Mickey? I mean, it's just a matter of the number of outputs that you want to build, right?
Definitely, you can, depending on exactly how you need to divvy up the different program mixes. X32, QL5. I'm not very well versed on these live mixers, live boards, but you should be able to get those done with those.
Next question.
Chris Widener of Lafayette, Indiana says, does anyone have a good short arm internally cabled mic arm recommendation? So short and internally cabled.
Yeah, Jason?
Again, barring Alex's, what is it, $600 solution?
It's not $600.
It's just $600.
$300.
But the Heil, Bob Heil makes a fantastic mic arm, and it's really quiet. Here, I'll leave this unmuted, and you can hear it. That's right, nothing.
Yeah, I don't have a easy way for me to show it. I'll show it tomorrow, but I'm using an OC White Ultima, and it is more expensive, but it is short, and it, as you can see, is easy to swing around, and it is internally cabled. Go ahead, Bill, and then Chris.
So I'm also using an OC White, but the mechanical version, and it's got all sorts of weird things, but it's quiet and stable, and it leaves the mic where you put it.
Go ahead, Chris. Did you have?
Yeah, at the beginning of office hours, I started with a desk, a floor stand, and then I got one, and then I got the Heil, and I didn't go as far as you did, Alex, but I ended up on it's called a Compass Blue or Blue Compass or something. I guess that's making a little bit of noise, but way quieter than the others. I didn't like the Heil for some reason. I can't remember why.
I've used the Heil for years. So the main reason that I went to an underslung was primarily because I want to see monitors I have a lot of monitors, and so I want to be able to see them clearly. And it was getting in my way, and I was bumping the back of it into one of the monitors. I actually scratched one. That was the end of that. That one is why I don't use it anymore.
I've always felt. I'm sorry. I'll let you. We can go on.
Let's just jump to the last question of the first hour.
Okay, it comes from Ant Pruitt, who is here on the panel in San Francisco. ATEM Mini or Mini Pro? I've been borrowing an ATEM Mini Pro, but thinking the regular Mini would be just fine for local recording of my content. I'm not a streamer. Any thoughts?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
If you do not need the ISO recording, and if you do not need a multi-view, it is a really useful tool, and it is macro. You can use macros on it. You can automate it. You can drive cameras with it, and you'll keep it. Even if you do upgrade later, you'll keep it because it's just so functional.
Go ahead, Jason, and then Stuart.
Yeah, +1 on that. Even as an audio, or even as a switcher, like router, just multi-in, multi-out, nothing like it.
You go ahead, Stuart.
Mini Pro ISO. I have this thing about buying things that I can use for multiple purposes. If I can only use it for one purpose, I don't buy it. And I think you'll find you'll get more use over a longer period of time with the top model than you will with the bottom model.
You will eventually want the extreme ISO. I'm just letting you know, like, you can buy something in between, but you're gonna yeah, there it is. He's showed to. I have bought the Mini, then the Mini Pro. I didn't get the Mini Pro ISO because I was just like, I got to stop. And then the Extreme ISO came out, and I went ahead and got that. So my Pro now, my Mini got absorbed into something else. My Pro is now my kitchen one when we do the cooking things. And then my Extreme ISO is the one, and it's the 2 HDMI outs, 2 USB outs, super source, 8 inputs, ISO record. Eventually you're just going to want to get there. So you can buy something in between and then sell it on eBay later, but you're going to eventually want to get to that point once you start ratcheting up to where you want. Being able to save all the ISOs out and then get the edit from what you had there with all the ISOs and drop it into whatever you're going to cut with, and then replace your original footage back with it, is pretty cool. Go ahead, Stuart.
Just an aside on the ATEMs, if Jonas is around, get him to show you his camera pointing at his ISOs. The LEDs cycle in the opposite direction when you shoot at a high shutter speed. It's weird. It's fabulous, but weird.
So we have, that was a great hour. We went through a lot of questions. So excellent job by our producers in Mokana asking those questions and moving us forward. Excellent job on the panel of being able to get through an enormous number of questions, but we're not done yet. I'm warning you, we've still got 13 questions that have lined up for the MixPre. So this is going to be a busy second hour. So get ready for that. I can't believe that we went from everywhere from really techie networking of V6 to sneakers in 1 hour. It's kind of an interesting process. Okay, so we're going to change gears. and now move into our second hour. We have Mickey, of course, who has been helping a lot of folks that have been working on the MixPre, and of course we have John Tatoulis, one of the founders and the CEO of Sound Devices, who has been kind enough to join us. So we're going to put John a little on the hot plate here, as well as Mickey. It's good to see you, John.
All right. Yeah, good seeing you. This is always a lot of fun because there's so much knowledge on this panel here. It's pretty fantastic. And, to hear all these different perspectives from all these geographies and, all these different use cases, it's just such a powerful forum for discussion and learning.
Well, it's good to have you. And so we would normally have you draw out a lot of things, but I feel like we have so many questions that we better get to the questions almost immediately. But I'll ask one before we get going, and someone else might do this, but how did the MixPre, how did it happen? How did it come? How did the product evolve inside of Sound Devices?
Yeah, that's a good question because, for many years, our kind of foundation was analog field mixers. Our first product of significance was the 442, a really capable 4-channel field mixer. Nice input transformers, output transformers, very capable, designed for broadcast, rugged. And then we expanded the line into production recorders. So the 7 series recorders coming from 2-channel, 4-channel, and 8-channel. And we had this product line that served this very high performance production sound for picture world. And our analog mixers continued to trudge along. And, Mickey was talking about using a 552 in his audio chain. So that's, these things still continue to trudge along. And it was us, as well as other manufacturers, recognize that there's this open market that's an opportunity for a product that has tons of capabilities and great performance, but doesn't need all the tools that something like our 688 or 633 had at the time. So we introduced the first series of MixPres, and these were quite compact units here. The MixPre 3 is a nice compact little product that in this product represents just about the same feature set that we had in our 744T. That product came out at $4,200, and a MixPre 3 is now in the $700-ish range. So we were able to bring at a price point and a capability things that people were asking for in a size that you could put in a large front pocket in a jacket. And it's not just a mixer. So from the original manifestation of these was really a mixer, and but the recording capability is just as important of it. Mickey, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think I don't know if if Marty's not here. Greg Kurt, I don't know if you have your MixPre handy, but it started out as a very capable, essentially, we use it a lot as a glue back then, the analog MixPre. And it's like, for the price, those 2 amazing preamps solve so many problems for at least like in the film and TV production sound world. And then after that, the MixPre D was released, which had a USB connection, and it was capable of serving as an interface. And did it have a SPDIF as well, John? The MixPre D?
The MixPre D had AES-3 out. So that
AES,
a selectable mic line, or AES-3 on a transformer balanced AES.
And this was like before the time that the MixPres had screens. And again, like in many circumstances, it served as a problem solver for a lot of people. And now it's in a totally different league of its own. Like, it's a full-blown production recorder now. So it's the steps that it took from its first version is like, it's huge.
Go ahead, Greg.
Well, and we're like a lot of other manufacturers where there's more capable silicon available. There's efficiencies in powering, so we're able to put things in a product the size of a MixPre that we simply couldn't do years ago. So we're able to put a full multi-channel audio interface, full digital recorder, have preamplifiers that have sufficient gain. And before the show, we were running down and everybody was talking about microphones. That's something that is pretty important in any audio device, having a front end that has enough gain. So one of the things that was kind of a foundational to the MixPre and all of our professional products is having tons of gain. Way back in the Shure days, I was Shure product manager for their mixer and signal processing products in the 90s. And we had a product called the M267. And when I first started working at Shure, I looked at that product. It had 90 dB of gain at the front end. And I was wondering, why does it have so much gain? Well, if you looked at the sensitivities of microphones back then, an SM63 or some of these dynamics, when they're at a distance from the subject to microphone distance, the audio level is so low, you need a vast amount of gain. And what we have today is we're using dynamic microphones. We're oftentimes putting them at a distance, especially for these speech kinds of applications where you do need a fair bit of gain. And a lot of MixPre users are running 65 plus dB of gain, even with a 58 or an SM7B, because those are fairly low sensitivity microphones. So you need a lot of gain. Some people are using extra gain stages, which could introduce noise and such. You really want that right at the front end. So having a preamp that has sufficient gain is kind of one of the really important things of any of these products. And that's something that, for field recording, we spent a lot of time to make sure that we could get that in a portable product that's run off of batteries. It's easy to do that off of mains, but off of batteries, that's the challenge.
Good, Greg.
I was going to tell you, I have a 32A that's still in service, and it's still a great mixer. But the beauty, as Mickey was saying, the beauty of the small little the first MixPre was you get all this weight off your chest, you put it on your belt. You're doing a simple run and gun. You got your boom in one hand. You got your mixers on your belt. You're done. It was, I can't tell you how many guys were saying, "Where's your rig?"
Yeah,
it's right here. It was fantastic, and the new MixPre is just as fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, and again, it's where we're seeing these efficiencies with components where we're able to get so much capability in such a small in such a small chassis. Inside there's FPGAs, so there's lots of computational horsepower that we can take advantage and put some of the plugins and things like that. So these are things that we simply couldn't have done in the earlier days of Sound Devices. So now we can take advantage of those tools.
Let's go ahead and jump into the questions, Bill.
Sure. Courtney Gooden has the first one from here on the panel in Hollywood, California. I have a MixPre 3 version 1. Is it possible to have it modded to enable Noise Assist and other plugins? He's holding it up.
That is a different hardware. So although it looks on the outside, the chassis, and you look at some of the PC boards, if you took a quick glance at the circuit board, they look very similar, but there are some fundamental differences. There's additional RAM and things like that are on board the Generation 2 that are enabling some of those additional features.
So you don't offer a hardware upgrade path. It'd be cheaper just to sell it on eBay and then buy a new one.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I use my MixPre 3, my original series, all the time. So, there's still tons of utility, and, it's essentially the same type of preamplifiers on the MixPre 2. So it's got the same gain figure and all that. You don't get the advantage of some of the later tools, the 32-bit, some of the additional processing plugins, but, still an incredibly relevant, useful product.
And that was my other question about 32-bit, because I didn't know if it would require any additional horsepower, just mainly a formatting issue or software change. But you required more DSP power, I guess, to do that then.
Yeah, so there's some differences between those two architectures that are just enough so that we were able to do that with the Generation 2 product.
Next question.
Comes from Eddie Martinez in Palo Cedro, California. What are the best practices for Zoom, ATEM Mini, and MixPre audio chains, and where do you place the MixPre?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Oh, you don't.
Go ahead.
If you don't actually need to feed audio to the ATEM, like if you're not recording on the ATEM, or if you are not streaming directly from the ATEM, like doing an RTMP or YouTube stream directly from it, I would recommend that you just hook up the MixPre directly to the computer via USB, and that would be a much cleaner path as opposed to adding an additional unbalanced analog path going into the ATEM.
Right, that's the identical path I'm using here. I'm using an ATEM for my camera, and I've got, well, actually an 888 in this case, since I've got some other things connected to it, but essentially using the MixPre as an external sound card. And that's really, when these are plugged in over USB, the way to think of it. It's an external USB sound card that has microphone preamplifiers and routing, etc.
Next question.
I think Aaron Giancarli's question was pretty much answered there. How was the panels MixPre being fed into their ATEMs? So unless there's some amplification, let's move on. And we're going to move on to Eddie Martinez in Palo Cedro again, who says, can you create a step-by-step mix minus specific to Zoom? It would help to train others on the team and save me time.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
I don't know if we have the time.
John, you have it. I think John might have have it up. Do you have a camera angle on that?
I do. Let me switch to it here. So I've got a MixPre 6 here. You can see that okay?
Uh-huh.
All right. So I've got a single input, and at this point it's a dynamic microphone. So let's just look at the input, and you'll see that I've got about 60 dB of gain on the front end here. And I like to keep the low cut in. And in a low cut, I've got pretty aggressively at 120, but I don't want any table tapping and things like that. If I look at my second page here, and one thing to note, I always put the MixPre in advanced mode. So the unit from the factory comes in what's called basic mode, and it simplifies the interface so that you can plug a microphone in, turn an input, and off you go. But you really want to be in advanced mode so that you can gain all the capabilities and access all the tools on board. So this is the interface when you see it in advanced mode. And that includes the ability to have input delay, input linking. You can have a phase or polarity. You can reverse that if you've got any issues with two relative microphones. But this is the input screen. So that's fairly straightforward. And now let's get to really the routing. And if you're talking about routing, I like to do what I call the two-bus method. And it gets a little, you got to kind of walk through this, and there's a good tech note that we have up on our website that discusses exactly how to do that. And first, when we look at what we send to USB, this is being sent to Zoom. This is how I set it up. I send to USB what's called the stereo out left. And when I send out to USB 2, I send stereo out right. Now with a MixPre 6, I like to, if I'm using this as an interface, I'll actually turn this off and not have anything routed out of USB 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'll turn all of those off if I'm using this solely as a USB device for Zoom. So that's USB 4. These just happen to be routed. 5 is not routed. 6 is not routed. 7 is track left. Now, the issue that can happen when you have USB channels, and this is, again, USB outs from the MixPre into the computer, what can happen if you have it set up so that these other outputs are going and you have Zoom turned on, Zoom will take all of those USB channels and sum them. So you could potentially get echoing issues. So again, I like to turn off all of the USB outputs except for 1 and 2. So let's go back here. So again, USB, outputs, reach around this from here. Stereo out left. USB 2, stereo out right. So what that means from the output standpoint, I have these stereo buses. So I have stereo out left. I take my two sources, which are microphone 1, microphone 2. Let's say I'm just using 2 microphones. And I'm sending, those are the source for my stereo out left. And now, stereo out right, I'm also just summing those mono. Those are my source, left and right. So what that means is this, and this is important. My inputs here, 1 and 2, not only are they being sent to, if I plug headphones into this, I'll be able to listen to it in the main left and right bus that's bouncing here. But it's also going to the ISO channel here, so I've got that input 1 going to ISO. But it's also going out USB because it's routed through that stereo out bus. Now on the USB return, I have that set for channel 3. Well, let's do that here. Channel 3 USB, and I'll take USB linking. I'll link 3 and 4. And again, I want to make sure in my USB routing here that I don't have anything going out. I'm going to turn that off because that would go back to the stream. Okay, so the way I've just set this MixPre up is that input 1 is going to the stream and my headphones. Input 2 is going to the stream out USB into headphones. Input 3 is going to my headphones only, not going to USB, but this is what I can use to monitor coming back in my headphones. So this is a way using that stereo out as a bus so that you can have monitoring in headphones, have gain control of that right at the front panel of the unit. Mickey, is this how you typically set up a MixPre?
I'm not entirely sure what Eddie needs exactly, what sources he needs to mix together and which channel he needs to mix minus. But if it's just his microphone that he needs to feed out, yes, I would create an output, essentially matrix using the left and right output source there and feed that out via the USB 1 and 2 as you did. But for his return to listen to Zoom, I would just select USB 1 and USB 2 as the headphone preset. And that would be a cleaner way, I think, to be able to monitor. But that's for the most simplistic use case.
Right. What Mickey was showing there was just going into the headphone setting and selecting or building a headphone. Now, if I'm just listening to USB 1.2, which is return, then that is going to be the USB source from the Zoom. The downside of just listening to USB 1 and 2, especially on Zoom, is you don't get any side tone. And you want to have side tone so that you can hear your local microphone. And in absence of that, you're having a tough time being able to control your own voice or your dynamics and such. So if you want to have both side tone of listening to your own source and the return audio, that mixing method where that 2-bus method where you're using the stereo out is the way to accomplish that.
Go ahead, Courtney, real quick.
Yeah, that was my main problem with using USB. My MixPre 3 is that I wanted to have side tone, but I wanted, I couldn't do it without feeding back into Zoom, and that solves that problem. And plus, it gives you a volume control, a separate volume control over your feedback. The rest of the panel's audio coming into your headphones without contaminating the USB back into Zoom.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Right.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John. Sorry, I threw you off.
It is a little. It's a little cumbersome to set that up initially, but once it's set, you can save that off as a setup, and you can restore it. Just with a single selection, so that it makes it really convenient if you're using the MixPre in multiple modes. You may use it for field recording, and you'll have a preset for the field recording. But if you want to do that routing, because it does take a little time, you want to. If you're new to it, you want to take a breath, grab a sip of coffee, and just kind of slowly get into it. And you walk through the signal chain. Audio is nice that we can kind of walk through that signal chain in our minds and know, all right, that signal is going there. It's hitting this bus. That bus is being sent to USB. I'm good. What else is being sent to USB? What's coming back from USB? You kind of walk that through in your mind and think about those routings so that you don't create an echo path. And that's the biggest challenge. You don't want to feed program, which is the return from the Zoom session or any remote session back to your USB outs. That's an easy way to have a feedback back path generated.
Go ahead, Courtney.
But one thing, if you wanted to record that same session on and hear both sides of the conversation on your MixPre 3, you would have to record a 4-track. Would you have to record a 4-track, 4-channel recording instead of a LR only?
Well, the nice thing about it is your left-right is containing the full mix. It's containing your local audio as well as the remote audio, and then your ISOs. So if you're using channel 1, channel 2, and in this case with the MixPre 6, my example, I had 3 and 4. Those were sent directly to those ISOs, so I had those as ISOs available as well. So if I wanted to post-mix those, I had that, but I also had a left-right that was ready to go that was a mix. The one other thing that is a big benefit in this setup is in this scenario that I have right here, I have some delay in the camera. So this camera chain takes a certain amount of time because it's going through the ATEM and it's getting converted to video, and then the audio is matching up to it. Using this bus method, I can set a stereo out delay. So you see here, I've got 150 milliseconds of delay dialed in. So it's just kind of a rough spot. I haven't tested it, but I know that that's going to match my lip sync up much better than if I had no output delay. Now, this output delay here is only available at those buses. So you want to have it, that's the reason to use this routing method so that you can apply that output delay. The benefit of that, when I'm listening locally here, that delay is not in my audio chain. So I don't have that delay is just showing up on the output, and I don't even have to consider it. It's just being delayed, being sent to over USB. So it's all done and accomplished. There are input delay that is applicable to each of the inputs on the MixPre Series 2, but those are really more to match microphone sources or input sources. And it's a much less, amount of delay. And it's, typically for, kind of microsecond delay for capsule alignments and things like that. But that output delay, that's going to be where you're going to dial that in so that you can match your picture and your sound.
Next question.
Ant Pruitt of San Francisco says, I want to take the MixPre 3 for a walkthrough shoot. Wireless Lab suggestions to go into the MixPre from the talent is what he's looking for.
Well, there is this company called Audio Limited that make some pretty good
price,
pretty good transmitters. So
there's a big market for wireless. So it's hard to know exactly. Do
you have a price point that you're trying to hit, Ant? Nope. Can't hear you.
Zoom mute's on.
Zoom mute's
thinking.
Oh, go ahead.
I was thinking 400 or less.
So 400 or go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, at that price range, probably the Rode Go would be the ideal one. But if you can stretch a bit, and depending on how many channels you need at that price, might want to also consider maybe Deity or the Sony UWPD system. I actually really like the UWPD compared to the Sennheiser G3, G4. I like the fidelity of it more.
And I think that both Rode and Saramonic make one with 2 transmitters and 1 receiver that does a stereo input, so you could go in that way. So I think both of those would possibly work in that price range, about $300 for the dual transmitter and 1 receiver. Go ahead, Chris.
John, I was wondering if there was any truth to the rumors that the new MixPre Z for Zoom was coming out. Just the very simple 2 inputs, me, my computer.
Yeah. Well, we do have the USB Pre 2 is still an active product, and that gets used quite a bit. It's I think I've got one here.
I got one.
I mean, the idea.
This one, by the way, this MixPre right here. I'll frame it here. Says, let's see. This is one of my old ones. It says USB Pre number 58. So at some point in time, I owned 58 of these. But this is, by the way, this is 10 years old. A tank, works perfectly. One of the most amazing pieces of audio equipment ever made. Like, I just have to say it. It's just such a great piece of equipment.
I mean, clearly the series is great, but there's so many people that just want to sit down, plug into Zoom, do a call, sound better.
Understood. And, I think
Photoshop's my friend, and you could make this product.
We, our heritage is in, tools used for people who are, spend their lives and, this is their careers. And, and many people are using MixPres for their careers and, successfully. We recognize that there's lots of product ideas and opportunities for us. And, we're always looking at that stuff, but, we're not going away from, this USB pre space. We like this space. A little history. Sound Devices was the very first bus-powered USB audio interface. We introduced the first USB pre in 2000. At AES 2000, we previewed it. This was in the early dark days of USB audio when Sound Devices ended up bugging the Windows K-Mixer USB. We were debugging the Mac implementation. It was early grim days of USB audio. It's gotten a whole lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next question.
Aaron, I'm sorry. Jen Carley in Flagstaff again says, currently working field audio with a Sound Devices 633. However, I'm going to run a live streams audio and trying to decide if the extra purchase of a MixPre is worth it. Any opinions on that?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, it might be a good, safety tool wherein you can feed your primary mix to from the 833 going into the MixPre. And the MixPre is what goes out to the stream, while also sending a backup mix or maybe some room mics that you can fall back to in case something happens between the connection of the 833 and the MixPre.
John, anything to add to that?
Well, if they're on a 633 and they like that functionality and they like the UI and the touch and feel, the 833 is, it's a significant step up. But it does have USB audio in and out. It also has the processing architecture that can accommodate, all the tools that we're continuing to work on. The new seeder that's available, our noise assist. It operates with Dugan and all of those things. If you're a professional, it may be something to think about at some point. The 633 doesn't have the USB I/O.
I think he's using the 833.
Oh, they have an 833.
Yeah, 833, not 633. Yeah.
You can certainly use the 833 and it's USB out for live stream. Great. It's a 2-channel in, 2-channel out, but it's a very powerful tool for that.
Go ahead, Mickey, real quick.
With the question for John, like on the 833, are you able to add bus compression to the left-right mix bus?
If Paul was with us, we could answer that question immediately. I know we have channel compression. Let me quickly
Because that would be a very, like most web live streams are highly compressed. So that would be great if you could add bus compression to that. I know it has EQ on a channel by channel basis.
Right.
Next question.
Ray Maxwell from Vancouver and here in the panel says, would it be possible to jam time of day time code in from the Wingman app from your iPhone?
Presently, time code's got to come in from a physical jam to the device itself. There's no utility to do that over Wingman. That's something we're always looking at. I guess the question there is, how accurate is the time code being held by an iPad? So that's something that, unclear on. So in a time code environment, all of these devices are running temperature compensated, highly accurate, tunable crystals in our case, where from device to device, you can expect, less than a frame drift over a 24-hour period. An iPad clock on its own, not being reclocked continuously from other source, I'm not certain how well that holds. But always something we're looking at.
Go ahead, Mickey.
And I think it's also important to mention that the second generation of the MixPres, all of them have built-in timecode generators, as John mentioned. So you could, on the MixPre 3 and MixPre 6, and of course the MixPre 10 as well, you can set it to time of day, or I believe the terminology that is used is a 24-hour run. And then that will get the time of day time from the internal clock of the MixPre and feed that into the timecode generator. Then after that, switch it to free run, and you're in a traditional timecode setup for most productions that is based off of time of day.
That's great. Next question.
Eddie Martinez in Palo Cedro is back with, does the MixPre 3 make sense for product evolution? What's next for the Sound Devices MixPre line?
We're committed to this product category in this market, so we're going to continue to expand and develop this. We're always looking at new software tools that we can add to it. We're always looking at hardware variations. So, we have nothing to report until we have something to report. But it's something that it's a market that we like, and we can satisfy our professional customers as well as customers who are using MixPre type devices. And the kind of fun thing that has happened in electronics over the last many years is stuff from the consumer world first oftentimes shows up in the consumer world, and then it shows up in the pro world. So you get this information sharing. It used to be everything from only from the pro world would it show up in the consumer world. Now it's this sharing back and forth. So we're able to take tools and features that may first show up in a more consumer-oriented device, push them into the professional world, and vice versa.
I'm looking forward to the MixPre 16 myself. I'm pretty excited about that coming. Go ahead, Courtney.
Since this week, and I always reveled in annoying you in NAB, John, is the traditional time to introduce new products. Are you going to hold off any new product introductions till October's NAB, or do you just deliver them on your own time schedule if you are going to announce anything new?
That's a good question. I don't know if you recall, we introduced the 633 in October, which was the month after IBC, and that was back in 2014, 2013, somewhere around there. And it was independent of a trade show. And what we found is that at this point, trade shows are great, place to come together, fellowship, see the industry, get a sense of the pulse. From a manufacturer standpoint, yes, you can gain momentum at a trade show product introduction, but it's not required. So we've introduced products continuously in the last couple of years, independent of a trade show cycle, and we're going to continue to do that.
Go ahead, Mickey, real quick.
Yeah, along the same lines, are there any plans as of yet for BCA, Broadcast Asia?
We do participate in Broadcast Asia through our distributors. So oftentimes they will represent, and they'll have a stand, and they'll have our gear for those local markets. And oftentimes we'll have somebody from our U.S. staff those trade shows.
And I'm going to, I got a little loose there, but if you have a new question, even as panelists, make sure to put it into Makana so that everyone can vote on it and put it through there. So you can add to what we're asking, but don't ask new ones. I got loose and let it roll. So next question.
The next question comes from Jan Landy in Las Vegas. Why do you not include noise assist with the MixPre? Why is that an add-on?
When we first came out with the MixPre, we architected it so that it could grow and continue to evolve and have additional processing power so that we could do that. Noise assist was a development done by Dr. Steve Popovich, who's our staff PhD, and it was a development that took many, many years. He's a PhD scientist in noise reduction, worked in the automotive industry and in different environments. And we took that knowledge and we came up with this algorithm. And So this is not a kind of a throw it out the window kind of process. This is something that we took a lot of time and energy to develop, and there's just an investment that is required there. And so this is how we feel. This is a separate product that's independent, and the MixPre is on its own a very powerful tool. This just makes it additionally more powerful.
That's great. Next question.
Ant of San Francisco is back in with, are any of you powering your MixPre on the go with a USB-C power bank, or are you using the L-mount battery system?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Sorry, I wait my time for John.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Yeah, powering is, there's a bunch of different ways that you can approach with the MixPre, and it's going to depend on the model. The 3 and the 6 operate the same way, and that is that they can be powered completely off of either USB or from the battery mounts. So either of those two can fully power the unit. The MixPre 10 requires more power, and that can only be fully powered off of the battery mounts or external DC on the 4-pin Hirose connection. So first on the MixPre 3 and 6, yes, USB-C external battery packs, those will fully power it. External USB power supplies, that will fully power it. That's a Mac OS computer or a Windows computer that has a full USB-C compliant connection will also fully power it. Older computers that only have USB-A won't fully power it and require a breakout cable so that you can have one leg go into one USB port, the other leg go into the other USB port so that you can power it from a computer. You can also, of course, power it from the external batteries. There are different adapters, and I've got one here, if you can see this. This is a battery sled to 4-pin Hirose, and this will work with all 3 of the models. It's somewhat redundant with the MixPre 10, but there's circuitry in here to take the DC power and turn it into looking like a battery power supply. A couple other things to think about in terms of batteries. Primary cells that are lithium, you have reasonable runtime. Primary cells that are alkaline, you have nearly no runtime. The chemistry is just not compatible for use.
I've tested this and I can confirm it.
Yes, nickel metal hydride. I don't know. I had
So
a
fast.
Coolpix 990 back in 2003, and I powered it from AA batteries, alkaline. I think I got like 6 photos from it.
Yeah.
Nickel metal hydride, they'll power it okay, but really, if you're any kind of longer extended runtime, you're going to want an external USB-C pack or powering it through some kind of battery adapter with the Hirose. So yeah, that's Mickey's showing the Inspire Energy battery. These have become kind of the new standard for production bags. Those are, right at the maximum capacity that are able to be carried on an airplane. So that specific cell is a very good cell for the, for battery powered portable devices like MixPres and 8 series and such.
That's great. Next question. And we're going to move pretty quickly because we're still deep in questions. All right, next question.
Ken Jordan in Surrey, the UK says, can you demonstrate how you can save that setup for easy recall?
Sure, let's do that here. Let's jump to, I've got my setup here. I go to presets and I'll save. And I'm going to save this as sound.
And you can plug a keyboard in, right?
You can plug a USB keyboard, yep. I'm terrible at this. It's fun to see somebody, and we'll just hit OK.
Who's good at it?
Just save that setting. It's fun to go, especially when I visit customers on set, to see them navigate the menu and go through, and they're like Jedis. It's just fantastic to see how fast they can get to stuff in ways that I just simply can't.
And then how do you recall it? So you save it out as a preset.
Saved it out as a preset. And now, if I go back into presets and I go load preset, helps if I change the camera. So now you'll see I have that preset showing as.
And is there any limit to the number of presets that you can set?
These can be saved out to the SD card, so you can have a selection of presets. And you notice I'm scrolling using the side wheel here to make my selection.
That's great. Next question.
James Babbitt in San Diego. Can apps other than Noise Assist be installed in the MixPre 6-2?
The software code has to be fully implemented and integrated, so it won't accept, some, a VST plugin or something like that. These have to be developed, worked in conjunction with us. For instance, on the 8 series, we offer the Cedar plugin, and we worked with Cedar to implement that. So they had their code that could run on, Mac OS and Windows as a plugin in architecture, but in order for that to be implemented within a hardware architecture like the MixPre, that took a fair bit of development to implement that.
Next question.
Nitin of Pacifica says, does CloudLifter enhance or degrade MixPre 3 version 2 performance?
My Siri on my watch just went off. My opinion of the CloudLifter is it's a nice tool for preamplifier stages that don't have sufficient gain. If you have sufficient gain, there's no benefit of using a CloudLifter. On a MixPre 3, the tendency of a lot of sound mixers is that I don't want to turn that gain all the way up. I'm going to introduce some noise or something like that. All of us old school analog folks kind of think, yeah, I don't want to be up in that range. There's really no reason not to use all the gain available on your preamps on a modern architecture device. So use it and put the CloudLifter and use that on the other device, your mixer, another mixer that may only have 56 dB of gain at the front end.
Only. Yeah. Next question.
Jonas Telreutling in Germany, and our friend here on the show, is there a way to control a MixPre via Companion or via a Stream Deck?
I'm not that familiar with the Stream Deck protocol, but the ways that the MixPres can be controlled is through the little Akai protocols, the little USB controllers. We've implemented some controller controls for those so you can have linear fader controls. All the stop-start control can be activated.
Is there an API for that?
There is an API. It's not something that we've published, but we'll work with other manufacturers to implement that. So if there's a need for us to look at that, to crack that open with a manufacturer, we can explore that.
That'd be really interesting. To have Companion be able to control it would be, especially remotely. All right, next question.
Guy Cochran on the panel here often in Seattle. Did the AKM fire in the Pacific Rim interrupt the supply chain for sound devices?
It interrupted the supply chain for sound devices and just about every single other pro audio manufacturer that you're aware of and that you're probably using. In my career making audio gear, me and my business partner Matt, we've never seen any environment like we have today, with not just chip fab. There was an oscillator fab that was adjacent to the AKM fab that also was affected. There was issues with phenolic PC board material shortages that, so raw PC boards are constrained, tantalum caps for wireless devices. So many different classes of components are having constraint issues. We've seen lead times go from 4 weeks to 50 weeks in many classes of parts. So is a electronics manufacturer, I don't care what industry you're in, this is a very difficult time. You better have great purchasing people that are spending, 80-hour weeks, because that's what's required in order to continue to produce product.
Amazing. Next question.
Our friend here on the panel from Norway says, is there a plan for balanced output?
The MixPre 3 and 6 are unbalanced outs, and the MixPre 10 has balanced outs. The thought behind that is that by and large, most of the time with a MixPre 3 and 6, you're likely just recording locally, or you might just be going over USB. You're rarely going to be feeding a PA with these smaller devices. If you have a bigger system where you need more output routing, then we've got other products to accommodate that. Something like our 833, 888, Scorpio, those have, vast amounts of outputs and output routing flexibility.
Next question.
Mark Carter in Brooklyn, do you have any knowledge of why y'all got out of video? Loved your video devices.
We did too. The Pix 240 was a great piece, and people are still using those today, and the Pix 260. And what we saw is that the economics and the world changed, and we frankly didn't have unlimited engineering resources to do all the projects we wanted to do. And so what we prioritized was audio. We are, that's kind of our first love. We also acquired a wireless manufacturer after we did the video products. And so we recognized that audio really is, the path that we want to continue to expand and flesh out. We still support the Pix products. They're still, we still service them, and there's still lots of them in continued use.
As a 1080p capture, it's still my favorite for screen records and other things that are basic outputs or whatever. That's why it still sits on my desk, because when I record stuff, I just hit record. It records great. It pulls it out. And there's so much in it. The routing, being able to route my, I'm always kind of amazed at what that little box has built into it. Still, what's interesting is you can always tell how well a product is made when you go to eBay and you can't find any. Like nobody's giving. There's a lot of 240s out there and nobody is giving them up. All right, next. Yeah, go ahead, John.
One comment I do want to make is that a lot of the things that we did learn on the Pix and that whole series, we have infused in the audio products. So all that knowledge did not go to waste. It continues to be pushed forward.
Next question.
George Kennedy Jr., our friend in the Washington, D.C. area here on the panel often. Do you listen to yourself during office hours? Oh, he's asking the panelists. Do you generally listen to yourself during office hours or just the rest of the panel in your return? I find listening to myself distracting.
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I'm from voiceover, so I always am uncomfortable if I'm not monitoring exactly how I sound. So, yes, in the universal audio system, I am getting a fold back so that I can hear myself in addition to hearing the panel.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I put mine on 1 and 2. So basically, this is USB 1 and USB 2 coming out of the computer, and then 3 is me. So this way I could season to taste what's going on and balance the rest of the panel so the conversation sounds more natural in my ears. And then by hearing myself, if I'm doing plosives, like sometimes, Peter Piper picked, I can pick that up. I just did a low cut, so maybe that didn't come out as deafening as I've heard other people on the panel. They're not aware that they're pummeling us with their low ends and their P's.
Subtle hint. Courtney, real quick.
On my mixer, I can control the balance that I'm hearing in my IFB between the my microphone and anything else I'm feeding into the mixer, plus the USB return. They're on separate pots. And it also lets you, by monitoring your feed in your ear, you also hear things like, you're bumping the mic or things you would never hear or never notice, or you're tapping on the table, that's coming through. You'll hear that in your IFB if you're monitoring yourself. You won't if you're feeding directly into Zoom.
Next question.
Guy Cochran, Seattle, with the high-end 888 and Scorpio having the Ethernet port to automatically upload audio files to Frame.io, might we see this camera-to-cloud functionality come down into the MixPre line in the future?
I think that's. I think what Frame.io has done is remarkable, and it's kind of the very first of the feasible commercial environments. And I think you're going to see manufacturers of all types start to wake up to this and recognize that this is something that's going to happen. And, I don't have a crystal ball in front of me or our product plan that I am willing to share, but, this is something that all manufacturers are aware of.
Next question.
Roscoe Jones says, how has 32-bit float changed the field of recording industry, in the recording industry, and how will it change the workflows in the future?
I think we are still at very early days with 32-bit float. And one of the reasons is you've got a generation of production mixers that are not that aware of it. I was talking to a very knowledgeable, multi-Academy Award winning production mixer who really was not familiar with 32-bit float. They're familiar with 24-bit, but not really aware of the advantages of 32-bit float. I think we're going to see the tide change as software tools, as post-production tools start to accommodate it. Right now, you can't work in an Avid environment or some of these editing environments in 32-bit, and there's really no need to. So we're still delivering 24-bit for typical program. We're delivering 24-bit for most general material. But 32-bit at the acquisition, where we can make that gain decision after the fact, that's so powerful. And we're just getting started with this as software tools are supporting it and hardware tools are just supporting it. So we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there.
The next question.
Ray Maxwell in the panel and back from Vancouver says, is there a GUI app to configure the MixPre in the future?
You know, Wingman continues to evolve, which is the tool that gets used with the MixPre's. ST Remote gets used on the 8 series. So these tools are always evolving and changing, and you know, we're continuing to add features to it. So you know, these are certainly things that you know, in the future you'll see.
Next question.
Jan Landy in Las Vegas says, so many of the panelists on Office Hours are using the MixPre solely for Zoom meetings. What would be the minimum that you'd need to recommend to accomplish that goal?
You know, I would say a first generation MixPre 3 would certainly get you there without any issues. It would be a nice tool, enough preamplifier gain that you can use any microphone, and enough routing to give you a good send off to USB and return monitoring. And one of the other things that is important in the MixPre is it's got a really potent headphone circuit, and that's a really clean, you know, low distortion headphone circuit. So that's an important part of monitoring, because if you don't hear what, you know, the tapping and all the clicks and pops or whatever's going on in the room, you're going to miss that. So I would say, you know, any of those series are going to, you know, get you started.
Next question.
Michael J. in New York City says, hi, John. I have a MixPre 6. I love it. Any chance for a future with integration for Apple's Logic Pro?
It can work as an interface for Logic. Maybe Mickey's got a little bit more on that.
Yeah, definitely. You can set up the MixPre if it's plugged in via USB. Set it up as both your input and output interface and Logic, and it works like a charm.
Next question.
Moving on to John Lovell of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and John asks, can you compare the Zoom compared to the Zoom H6? Are there gain differences?
I've had a couple 20 minutes with the Zoom F6, so I'm not really knowledgeable to speak on it. I can certainly talk about our products. I understand. I believe it also has 32-bit. Maybe others on the panel have other.
I think he was asking about the H6. The F6, I think, has 32-bit float, but I don't know if they're
Good. Mickey?
Yeah, I think John may be being too humble here. It's light years away in terms of the quality of the preamps and the analog limiters. Analog limiters are, there's no comparison between the two.
I mean, you can definitely use a Zoom, but there's a massive difference between the two as far as audio quality, clean sound, able to handle, you know, higher impulse. Next question.
Stan Chan of Roseville says, can and will the Scorpio support 32-bit float in the future?
All the 8 series, when these were designed, have the architecture and the hardware that, if this is something that we would introduce in the future, they can accommodate that. So we did future-proof those products so that they can take advantage of those architectures.
Next question.
Jamie Fryer in Silver Springs, Maryland says, is that an old school Nagra on your shelf behind you, John?
Not only is it an old school Nagra, it's the actual 4.2 I used in school. I went to Northwestern School of Communications, and I used that on a project my senior year. I found the exact machine in their inventory, and I swapped them out with a 633, and I have the actual machine sitting on the shelf there.
That's awesome. Next question.
Michael J. in New York City says, sorry, I have to ask, any chance for an office hours discount code for just the noise assist plug-in? Hey, come on, John.
Probably not a bad idea to, check with the sales folks before we do this. But if we do this again, who knows?
There's an awful lot of users. It'd probably be a big sale day. Next question.
Idris Haggy of Fairfax says, USB interface scenario for classroom of 7 tables. Scenario 1, wired setting with 7 dynamic mics. Scenario 2, wireless 7 wireless microphones. Which interface would you recommend for both scenarios?
Well, I would think that MixPre 10 running, I can't,
Mix Assist?
well,
Mix Assist.
Yeah, Mix Assist would certainly do that and give you the ability to duplicate the gain of a single microphone. What an automatic mixer does is it will attenuate microphones when they're not being talked into, and it will adjust the overall gain level to match that of a single microphone. So as every time you double the number of open microphones, it reduces the overall gain by 3 dB. So that way you have a consistent gain level going out to your stream. So I would say a MixPre 10 with noise assist would be a great way to accomplish that.
Next question.
Gudrun Maas of Lake Constance, Germany says, YouTube recording of this show with additional automated languages. May we have automated German subtitles in addition to the usual English subtitles? There is no translation of the PDF manual of MixPre 3-2 available, as far as I know, and it would be a great help for him helping others.
Good suggestion. Thank you.
Yep. Next question.
And the final one in this group, Brent Kruger of Minneapolis, Minnesota, says, what are you using as a stand to get that nice angle?
It is a great angle of that. It's a great training angle.
This is just a good old Atlas, I believe, on my, is it this microphone? Yeah, this is a KSM 44A on an Atlas.
And then what's the camera angle for the MixPre? Like how are you setting that up?
Oh, actually this stand, let's go back to it. This stand is a Sound Devices accessory. It's called I think it might still be called the PIX base, because this was designed originally for the PIX recorders. But this, using the quarter 20 on the bottom of the mixer, is a great tool for using this on a desktop application.
That's great. And I think we have one more question.
Right, we had a late arrival. MixPre, this from Keenan Campbell in Princeton, Illinois. MixPre is a solid hardware investment. Can you do a quick overview of the plugins available?
So what are the plugins available for it?
There's Noise Assist, which is noise reduction, and that's able to be applied to either the output or to an individual channel. There's the Musicians plugin, which is a very unique tool that allows you to do essentially sound on sound. You can play back pre-recorded material. You can add additional tracks on top of it. You can punch in. It will record in monophonic wave. So if you need to record in monophonic wave, the Musicians plugin will accomplish that. Another tool is, like I said, Mix Assist, which is an automatic mixing algorithm. Turns off unused microphones. Great for applications anywhere from, if you're using 3 or more microphones. It's helpful for panel. It's designed for speech type signals, not designed for music. Let's see what else I've got on this particular unit. There's the Ambisonics plugin, which is a tool that will take a format or B format microphone and convert that to a binaural headphone monitor, a stereo mix that you can listen to directly in headphones. So that's a tool if you're doing single point, single location multi.
And that's for the 6 and the 10, right?
That's for the 6 or the 10 only. Yeah.
That's great.
So
Oh, good. Is there any?
Yeah, so that's the plugin offerings for now.
John, thank you so much for coming. That was such a great hour. It's just fantastic. I think that we learned a lot, and it was just really great hanging out with you. So
well, thank you.
Hopefully we'll get you to come back.
All right.
Thanks, John. Thanks to everyone. Great job to our producers asking the questions, pushing the whole conversation along in Makana. Great job to the panelists. It's one of our tightest shows, I think, from start to finish. So just really, really well done. Thanks for the great work. And we're now going to jump into the post show. Remember, tomorrow for the panelists, remember we're going to be asking you to show off your kit. So make sure that you're ready. Clean up the tables. Get ready to go. Okay, jumping in the post show. Thanks everybody. See you later.